In the great theater of nations, moments arise when the voice of one nation must answer the challenge of another. And here, in the heart of a billion souls, India prepares its reply. A reply not of mere words, but of history, of resilience, and of unshakable resolve. It is a story of pride, of struggle, and of destiny, a story that reveals itself as India steps forward to speak, not just for itself, but for the future of its people and the balance of the world. From the dawn of recorded time, India has been a land that has withstood the rise and fall of empires, a civilization that has seen invaders come and go, and yet it has endured, adapted, and emerged stronger. To understand India's reply to any challenge, one must first understand the deep currents of its historical resilience. For thousands of years, India has been shaped not by the might of conquerors, but by the unyielding spirit of its people. Whether it was the armies that swept across its northern plains, the colonial forces that sought to drain its wealth, or the countless attempts to suppress its identity, India has always risen from the ashes of adversity, carrying with it a legacy of unbreakable continuity. This is not merely a story of survival, but of transformation, of turning each hardship into a stepping stone toward greater strength. When Alexander marched into the subcontinent, he encountered warriors and philosophies that stunned even his seasoned empire. When the Mughals came, India absorbed their influences but never lost its own core, weaving their traditions into the grand tapestry of its culture. And when the British sought to subjugate it, India did not merely bend, it fought, endured 2 centuries of foreign domination, and finally rose with a movement so powerful that it inspired liberation across continents. Every time the nation was pressed against the wall, it found within itself the courage to not only resist but to transcend. The resilience of India is not born of defiance alone, but of an ancient understanding that the essence of a people cannot be extinguished by the will of another. This resilience is not confined to the battlefield or the corridors of politics. It is embedded in the very rhythm of life. Generations of Indians have learned to endure famine, poverty, and calamities both natural and man-made, yet even in those times they built, they created, they dreamed. The villages sang, the artisans crafted, the farmers sowed, the teachers educated, and the poets wrote verses that carried the hopes of millions. It is this capacity to endure hardship without losing sight of beauty, dignity, and hope that defines India's strength. When a challenge is presented, India does not tremble. It remembers. It remembers centuries of trials that have come before, and the certainty that none have succeeded in breaking its will. The reply to any provocation today is therefore not just political, it is civilizational. When India speaks, it carries with it the echoes of Vedic hymns, the teachings of the Buddha, the strategies of Chanakya, and the visions of freedom fighters who dreamed of a land unshackled. Its words are not just utterances of a present government, but the resonance of a people whose identity has been forged through millennia of endurance. This depth of history is what gives weight to India's reply. It cannot be dismissed as mere rhetoric because it is grounded in a legacy that no other nation can claim in quite the same way. Resilience in India is also about adaptability. While rooted in tradition, the nation has always embraced change. Foreign ideas, technologies, and systems were absorbed, reimagined, and made uniquely Indian. This is why India today stands as both ancient and modern, a paradox that confounds adversaries. It has the ability to stand firm in its identity while simultaneously transforming itself to meet the challenges of a new age. This dual strength ensures that any confrontation with India is never against a fragile state, but against a civilization that has mastered the art of survival and renewal. To reply to any external force attempting to diminish it, India draws upon this reservoir of resilience. It does not need to shout, for its history itself is the loudest testimony. No empire has lasted, no invader has stayed forever, no chain has been strong enough to bind it indefinitely. Each attempt to undermine India has eventually been met with its resurgence. This pattern is not coincidence, but destiny born of resilience that has been nurtured for centuries. When confronted, India does not begin from a position of weakness, but from a position of timeless endurance, knowing that it has already withstood the tests of time in ways that few nations ever could. In the grand theater of nations, few democracies carry the weight and diversity that India holds. At its core lies a foundation not built overnight, but nurtured through centuries of dialogue, debate, and the ceaseless quest for freedom. India's democratic structure stands as a living testimony to the will of a people who, despite the shadows of colonialism and centuries of foreign dominance, chose not the path of authoritarian command, but the voice of the many. And this foundation, born in the crucible of struggle, is one of India's greatest strengths, and when compared to the transient rhetoric of leaders beyond its borders, it radiates with a rare brilliance. To understand this strength, one must travel back to 1947, when India broke free from the chains of British rule. Emerging from a period of division, poverty, and immense social upheaval, the nation had every reason to embrace dictatorship, to place its trust in the singular vision of one leader who could command the fractured land. Yet India did not yield to that temptation. Instead, it chose the ballot, the voice of its people, and laid down a constitution that remains one of the most comprehensive expressions of human liberty and rights in existence. It was not an experiment in democracy. It was a declaration that the people themselves would be the guardians of their destiny. Unlike many nations where democracy has struggled to survive, India's democratic framework has thrived against unimaginable odds. The sheer scale is staggering. More than 1 billion citizens speaking hundreds of languages, practicing every major religion on earth, living in environments that range from Himalayan peaks to coastal plains. Each citizen, no matter how humble, holds the same vote, the same right to shape the future as the most powerful. It is this inclusivity that sets India apart, for it is democracy not in theory but in action, where the marginalized have a voice and the poor have a stake in the direction of the nation. When faced with rhetoric from abroad, especially one that seeks to belittle or provoke, India's greatest reply is not found in the echo of anger, but in the quiet power of its democratic institutions. A leader may boast of strength, may issue threats, may proclaim dominance, but such proclamations are fleeting. Democracies endure where egos falter. India's democratic foundation does not rest on the whims of one leader. It rests upon the collective spirit of its people. That spirit is far greater than any single speech, far more enduring than any fleeting insult. The vibrancy of Indian democracy is evident not only in elections, but in the ceaseless debates that shape its society. In the bustling streets of its cities, in the quiet corners of its villages, citizens argue, challenge, and express themselves with a freedom that is both chaotic and beautiful. It is not a democracy that is polished and silent. It is loud, messy, and vibrant, yet therein lies its strength. For this cacophony is not disorder but vitality, proof that the nation is alive with the spirit of participation. Where others may rely on control, India relies on the energy of its people to shape its path forward. This foundation also offers resilience against external attempts to pressure or dominate. A rhetoric that seeks to undermine India must contend not with a fragile state, but with a system that is deeply entrenched, tested, and trusted by its people. Every attempt to challenge it is absorbed and transformed, for democracy gives India not only strength, but flexibility. It allows dissent, it allows criticism, it allows change, and in doing so, it prevents stagnation. This adaptability ensures that India's voice in the world stage is not brittle, but resilient, capable of responding not with reactionary fervor, but with grounded confidence. India's democratic spirit also stands as a contrast to those who wield power through division. For while rhetoric may seek to highlight differences, India's unity is forged through diversity. Its constitution enshrines the protection of every community, every faith, every culture, creating a tapestry where no thread is too insignificant. It is this inclusivity that fuels its confidence, for it knows that it does not stand for a single people or ideology, but for a billion voices harmonizing in their own way. In this lies a reply far stronger than words, a reminder that true strength is not found in dominance, but in collective dignity. The story of India's economic rise is one that stretches across decades, weaving together resilience, ambition, and transformation into a narrative that is reshaping the very dynamics of global trade. For centuries, India was a beacon of prosperity, a land that drew merchants and travelers from across the world, lured by its spices, textiles, and the fabled wealth of its markets. Colonization disrupted this natural wealth, draining resources and crippling local industries, but the dream of economic resurgence never faded. From the moment of independence, India embarked on a journey not merely to rebuild, but to reimagine its place in the world economy. Today, that journey has brought it to the threshold of becoming one of the defining forces of the 21st century. In the early years, India's path was cautious, shaped by policies of self-reliance and state-led development. Industries were nurtured, infrastructure was slowly laid, and a foundation was built brick by brick. Critics doubted whether such a vast and diverse land could sustain economic progress under the burden of poverty, illiteracy, and limited resources. Yet, in typical Indian fashion, the nation persisted. It innovated within its limitations, developed a scientific base, and prioritized education, ensuring that generations of engineers, doctors, and thinkers would one day become its greatest export to the world. The 1991 reforms marked a decisive turning point. Faced with crisis, India chose openness, liberalizing its economy and inviting the world to witness its potential. What followed was nothing short of extraordinary. A new India emerged, bustling with entrepreneurial energy, eager to compete, and determined to transform itself into a hub of innovation and growth. From information technology to pharmaceuticals, from space research to renewable energy, Indian industries began to make their mark across the globe. This transformation was not limited to boardrooms and laboratories. It reverberated in the lives of millions, pulling them from poverty into a future filled with opportunity. The rise of India as a global economic player is not just about numbers on a graph, though they are impressive. It is about the sheer scale of participation. Over 1 billion people, each aspiring to a better life, each contributing in their own way to the larger picture. Farmers embracing new techniques, small businesses adapting to digital platforms, youth launching startups that challenge global giants. This is the collective force that powers India's economy. It is not driven solely from the top, but from the ground up, a mosaic of ambition that no rhetoric can dismiss. On the world stage, this economic growth translates into a shift of power. For decades, global trade was dominated by a few industrialized nations. India's rise disrupts this balance, offering an alternative that is neither dependent nor submissive, but assertive. Its markets attract the attention of global corporations, its talent fuels industries worldwide, and its innovations promise solutions to challenges far beyond its borders. This is the new reality. Any attempt to sideline India in matters of global trade or economics is met with the undeniable presence of its growing influence. But the story of India's economy is not simply about wealth accumulation. It is about redefining what progress means. Unlike the industrial revolutions of the past, which often came at great human and environmental cost, India is striving to balance growth with sustainability. Investments in renewable energy, in digital inclusion, and in green technologies signal a future where prosperity is not built on exploitation, but on responsibility. This ethical dimension gives India's economic rise a moral weight, positioning it as not just a competitor, but a leader capable of guiding global trade toward a more equitable path. The confidence that comes from such economic strength becomes India's natural reply to rhetoric that seeks to undermine it. When confronted with words meant to belittle, India's answer lies in its achievements. Satellites launched into space at a fraction of global costs, pharmaceuticals that save lives across continents, digital systems that connect millions in seconds, fun, and a youth population that represents the largest pool of potential in the world. Each success story is a declaration that India is not merely surviving in the global economy, it is shaping it. The strength of India's unity lies not in uniformity, but in its extraordinary diversity. Across its vast land, one finds hundreds of languages spoken, dozens of faiths practiced, and countless traditions preserved. Yet all of them converge into a singular identity called India. This is not accidental, nor is it fragile. It is the product of centuries of coexistence, negotiation, and shared struggle, an unbroken thread that weaves through villages, towns, and megacities alike. When challenges arise, when rhetoric from outside seeks to question its resolve, India turns inward to this reservoir of unity. It is here, in the collective embrace of its differences, that its confidence is forged. For millennia, this land has been home to a multitude of civilizations and kingdoms, each leaving behind its imprint on the culture, art, and thought of the subcontinent. From the Vedic traditions to the teachings of the Buddha, from the grandeur of Mughal architecture to the influence of colonial encounters, every layer has added depth to India's identity. Yet none has erased what came before. Instead, they have merged, creating a cultural mosaic so vast and intricate that no single narrative could ever define it fully. This acceptance of difference, this refusal to yield to division, is the foundation upon which India's unity stands. At the time of independence, when the wounds of partition were fresh and the nation was torn between despair and hope, many doubted whether such diversity could ever be held together. The world watched, expecting disintegration, expecting chaos. Yet India confounded those expectations. Instead of fragmenting, it found strength in inclusion, drafting a constitution that guaranteed equal rights and protections to all its citizens, regardless of creed, caste, or language. In that moment, India declared to the world that its unity would not be one of sameness, but of harmony amid difference. In the decades that followed, this unity became the shield against challenges both internal and external. Natural disasters struck, wars were fought, crises tested the resilience of its people, and yet the nation endured. The reason was simple. When tested, Indians did not retreat into isolated identities. They came together. In the aftermath of calamities, neighbors helped neighbors, communities rebuilt cities, and ordinary citizens extended their hands across divisions. This instinct to unite in the face of adversity is not taught in textbooks, but is embedded in the very rhythm of Indian life. It is what allows the nation to rise from trials stronger than before. The spirit of unity is most visible in the democratic process, where millions of voices, from the most remote villages to the busiest cities, come together to choose their representatives. No matter how different their backgrounds, they are bound by the shared belief that they are part of one collective future. Each election, with its vast participation, is itself a reaffirmation of this unity. The diversity of opinion does not fracture the nation. It reinforces its strength, showing that 1 billion perspectives can coexist under one flag. This sense of unity fuels India's confidence on the global stage. When it responds to rhetoric or provocation from abroad, it does so not as a divided land, but as a civilization speaking with one voice. The strength of that voice comes not from coercion, but from consensus, not from fear, but from trust in each other. A nation so vast, yet so bound together, cannot be easily shaken. For every attempt to undermine it must contend with the fact that behind India's reply stands not one leader or one region, but the will of 1 billion people. Unity and diversity also provides India with a unique kind of resilience. And where homogeneity may lead to rigidity, diversity allows adaptability. Different cultures, different ideas, and different perspectives constantly interact within the nation, creating solutions that are innovative and inclusive. This flexibility ensures that India is not bound to a single way of thinking or a narrow path forward. Instead, it is capable of evolving, of finding strength in compromise, and of moving ahead while carrying all its people along. Across the vast expanse of India's history, the idea of preparedness has always been a quiet constant, a force that ensures survival in a world often defined by conflict and power struggles. And in the modern age, that preparedness finds expression in the strength of its armed forces, in the subtlety of its strategic alliances, and in the determination of its people to defend their sovereignty. India does not display aggression lightly, nor does it trumpet its capabilities for spectacle. But beneath its calm surface lies a nation that has learned through centuries of struggle that strength must always be ready, even when silent. The geography of India itself has demanded vigilance. From the icy ridges of the Himalayas to the long stretch of coastal waters, the land is surrounded by borders that have often been contested, watched over by neighbors with competing ambitions. It is here, in these terrains of tension, that India's military readiness is most visible. Soldiers stand guard in the highest altitudes known to man, sailors patrol vast seas, and air squadrons keep watch over skies that hold both promise and peril. These men and women embody the enduring spirit of guardianship, ensuring that the nation's sovereignty remains untouched. Yet India's preparedness is not measured only in weapons or numbers. It is measured in the careful cultivation of alliances that extend its reach and bolster its security. Across the decades, India has built relationships with nations that share its vision of stability and peace, weaving a network that strengthens its position on the global stage. These alliances are not born of desperation but of choice, guided by a strategic awareness that recognizes the importance of balance in an uncertain world. By walking the fine line between independence and partnership, India ensures that it is never isolated, that its voice carries weight in councils where the future of nations is decided. The silent deterrence of India's strength lies also in its technological advancement. From indigenous missile systems to satellite surveillance, from modernized naval capabilities to the growing presence of cyber defense, the nation has invested not in showmanship but in substance. It is a deliberate path, one that values long-term security over short-term intimidation. Each development sends an unspoken message. India may not boast, but it is prepared. This quiet confidence is more powerful than any declaration, for it forces adversaries to reckon with a strength that is both visible and hidden. India's history has been scarred by wars and conflicts, and those memories serve as lessons etched deep into the nation's consciousness. The wars of the past century, fought on its borders and within its regions, remind it that vigilance is not optional but essential. From the battles against invasions in the north to the defense of its coasts, India has learned that readiness is not a temporary state but a permanent duty. Every soldier who stands in the biting cold of Siachen, every naval officer navigating the Indian Ocean, every airman watching the skies embodies that duty, carrying forward a legacy of defense that stretches far beyond their own lifetimes. But military preparedness in India is not only about defense against external threats, it is also about the assurance it offers its people. The knowledge that their borders are secure, that their sovereignty is protected, instills a confidence that allows the nation to focus on growth, development, and progress. This assurance is a silent foundation upon which the aspirations of 1 billion people rest. Without it, the nation would be consumed by uncertainty. With it, the nation strides forward with determination. Strategic alliances, too, amplify this confidence. Whether through partnerships in defense technology, joint exercises that build trust, or diplomatic engagements that align visions, India ensures that it is never isolated in its pursuit of security. It forges ties with powers both near and far, not as a subordinate but as a partner whose contributions are valued. This web of alliances strengthens deterrence, signaling to those who would test its resolve that India does not stand alone. The combination of military readiness and strategic foresight makes India's reply to provocation a formidable one. It is not reactionary but deliberate, not emotional but calculated. Its deterrence lies in the knowledge that it can defend, that it can respond, and that it can endure. This quiet strength is the product of centuries of lessons, decades of preparation, and the unyielding determination of its people to protect what is theirs. India's advancement in technology is one of the most remarkable transformations of the modern era, a journey that has taken the nation from a land once dismissed as underdeveloped to a powerhouse of innovation and scientific progress. In a world where rhetoric often seeks to measure worth by dominance, India's true reply comes not in the form of loud declarations, but in the quiet power of achievement. Each innovation, each breakthrough, each step forward in science and technology speaks with more authority than any boast, for it is proof not of intention, but of capability. The seeds of this advancement were sown in the early years after independence, when leaders recognized that knowledge would be the key to sovereignty. Institutions were built, scientists were encouraged, and a culture of research was nurtured despite scarce resources. It was in these humble beginnings that the foundations of modern India's technological strength were laid. Even when poverty weighed heavily and challenges seemed insurmountable, the nation chose to invest in education and science, understanding that this was the true pathway to dignity and independence. The Indian Space Research Organization stands today as one of the most powerful symbols of this vision. From launching its first modest satellites to sending missions to the Moon and Mars, India has demonstrated a mastery of space technology that has surprised and inspired the world. What makes these achievements extraordinary is not only their success, but the cost at which they were accomplished, far lower than that of established space powers. This efficiency, born of ingenuity and determination, has become a hallmark of India's technological identity. It is a statement to the world that India can achieve greatness not by imitating, but by innovating in its own way, Beyond space, India's prowess in information technology has reshaped global industries. From the rise of software giants to the spread of digital infrastructure across the subcontinent, Indian talent has become indispensable to the functioning of modern economies. Cities like Bengaluru and Hyderabad are no longer mere centers of outsourcing but hubs of innovation, producing technologies that are deployed worldwide. The digital revolution in India is not limited to elite corporations. It extends to rural villages where mobile phones and internet access have transformed lives, enabling farmers to access markets, students to access knowledge, and communities to access opportunities once denied to them. Pharmaceuticals and biotechnology stand as another frontier where India has made its mark. The ability to produce affordable medicines has not only strengthened its economy, but also saved millions of lives across the globe. During global health crises, India has often stepped forward as the pharmacy of the world, demonstrating that its technological progress is not confined to self-interest, but extends to humanitarian contribution. In these acts of service, India asserts itself not through confrontation but through compassion, proving that strength can also be measured in the ability to uplift others. Renewable energy and sustainable technologies form yet another chapter in India's reply to arrogance. Recognizing the urgency of climate change, India has embraced solar and wind power on a massive scale, positioning itself as a leader in the global shift toward clean energy. This is not merely a technological pursuit, but a moral one, reflecting the civilizational ethos of harmony with nature. By investing in green technologies, India shows that progress and responsibility need not be at odds, and that a nation can grow while safeguarding the planet for future generations. Perhaps the most compelling aspect of India's technological rise is the human capital that drives it. With one of the largest youth populations in the world, their work is not just transforming India but influencing industries and societies globally. They are the living embodiment of India's technological reply, a reply rooted in vision, intelligence, and perseverance. Technology in India is not an isolated achievement. It is deeply tied to the spirit of resilience that has defined the nation throughout history. Each advancement is both a product of necessity and a testament to ingenuity. In a land where resources were once scarce, innovation became a survival skill, and today it has become a defining strength. This strength ensures that when India is confronted with rhetoric or condescension, it need not respond in kind. Its satellites, its digital networks, its laboratories, and its entrepreneurs reply with evidence more powerful than any words. India's cultural depth is not confined to the pages of history or the ruins of ancient monuments. It lives and breathes in the rhythm of daily life, in the rituals, philosophies, and artistic expressions that continue to shape its identity. In a world often obsessed with military might or economic dominance, India carries with it a different form of power, civilizational wisdom accumulated over thousands of years. This is the essence of its reply when confronted with arrogance, for while weapons may intimidate and wealth may impress, it is culture and wisdom that endure, shaping hearts and minds far beyond borders and generations. The foundations of this cultural wealth stretch back to some of the world's earliest civilizations. From the Indus Valley to the Vedic period, India nurtured systems of thought that explored not only material progress, but the deeper meaning of existence. Concepts like Dharma, Yoga, and Ahimsa were born here, ideas that would travel far beyond its shores, influencing societies and philosophies across continents. Even in the most difficult periods of conquest and colonization, these ideas were never extinguished. They persisted, quietly guiding generations, reminding them that true strength lies not in domination, but in understanding the harmony between self, society, and the natural world. The diversity of India's culture is itself a form of strength. Every state, every community, every faith has contributed to a mosaic of traditions, festivals, music, literature, and art that together form an unparalleled civilizational heritage. This depth creates resilience, for no single disruption can erase it. When one part of the culture is challenged, others rise to preserve the whole. It is a vast, interconnected web of identities that together assert an unbroken continuity. This resilience is why India can respond to provocation with calm assurance, because its sense of self is so deeply anchored in cultural wisdom that it cannot be shaken by temporary storms. Philosophy and spirituality form another dimension of this cultural strength. The teachings of figures like the Buddha, Mahavira, Adi Shankara, and countless others have offered the world not doctrines of conquest, but paths of liberation and peace. These teachings continue to inspire not only Indians but people worldwide, seeking solace and meaning in an age of turmoil. This universality of Indian wisdom is itself a quiet reply to arrogance, a reminder that while empires may rise and fall, the ideas that guide humanity toward balance and compassion endure. Art and literature, too, are instruments of this reply. From the epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana to the poetry of Kabir and Tagore, Indian voices have articulated truths that resonate far beyond their time. These works are not just cultural artifacts, but living guides, reminding society of the eternal struggle between justice and power, humility and pride. Each story, each verse, is an assertion that India's civilization has always engaged with the deepest questions of human existence. This cultural depth ensures that its voice carries authority not from force but from wisdom. India's music and dance forms, with their intricate rhythms and profound symbolism, offer another expression of this heritage. Whether it is the meditative strains of a sitar, the storytelling of Bharatanatyam, or the vibrant beats of Bhangra, each performance is more than entertainment. It is a connection to history, a dialogue with the divine, a celebration of life in all its forms. These traditions are not relics. They are living practices that continue to evolve, reminding the world that India's culture is not frozen in the past, but dynamically alive in the present. This cultural depth also informs India's diplomacy and global presence. When it engages with other nations, it does so not merely as a political entity, but as a civilization. Yoga, Ayurveda, and classical philosophies have become bridges that connect India to the world, offering not only techniques for health and wellness, but a worldview that emphasizes balance, respect, and interconnectedness. Through these contributions, India responds to condescension not with confrontation, but with generosity, sharing its wisdom freely, confident in the knowledge that its culture has something enduring to offer. Underlying all of this is a sense of civilizational continuity that very few nations can claim. While borders have shifted and rulers have changed, the essence of India's culture has remained unbroken. This continuity gives India a unique strength, for it knows that its identity is not defined by any single leader or moment in history, but by the accumulated wisdom of millennia. It is this knowledge that makes India's reply to arrogance so profound. The voice of a nation backed by thousands of years of culture and wisdom does not need to shout. It simply speaks, and the weight of its heritage is enough to command attention.